All right, everybody, welcome to the DM and Friends. I am DM Angelo, and I have with me today Allen Hammack, the great Allen Hammack.
Hello, everyone.
Yes. Thank you so much, Allen, for coming on. I really appreciate you taking the time out in the day. I know today you were watching the Packers, and
Yes.
and I heard they smashed.
They smashed the Vikings today, which was good. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm sure you're pretty happy about
So
that.
I'm in a good mood. Yeah.
Good. Allen, thanks for coming on. I just kind of wanted to talk about a couple things. We in particular, we were trying to figure out where I met you. I think it was at GaryCon. I had stopped going to GaryCon around 10. So I think I early on might have seen you there. But I remember one of my first games with you was at North Texas, which, we love North Texas.
A great convention, NTRPG Con in Dallas in June, and they are close to being sold out of their pre-sale tickets. So
yeah. What a great event that is. I will say that, and I'm not trying to blow smoke your direction, but you are one of the favorite people for myself to see, because we got so much in common as far as with Boothill, number one. I think you and I are the only two that run Boothill there, and that it's such a good con to go and see friends and just rub shoulders with you guys that have been there a while, been a part of this.
Steve Winter will sometimes run it, but he likes to do that touchy-feely third edition kind of Boothill that he helped edit. I prefer the second edition shoot 'em up that I helped edit. So
yeah. He I think I played in one of his 3 games, and that's it. It does take it with the whole mechanics of that is so much more different.
It was evolving the way that they tried to evolve all the role-playing games. And some things are more adapted to eking out every skill that you could possibly have in a situation. I don't know. I'm not a fan of that. I'm more a fan of the act like you're in a Western movie and let's have some action. So
yeah. And those of you guys that don't know, but if you ever play in a game with Allen Boothill, it just ends up your character's going to die. So it's a bloodbath. It's not a don't get attached to your character. It's a shootout, and bottom line,
a higher casualty rate than Shadow Dark. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. It's pretty funny. I was actually going through some of my stuff, and I have the first Boothill game I ever played with you. I played the Rock and G Ranch, and I have your your characters, and
the Mr. G there was based on the character that Gary Gygax played in it in one of Brian's original campaigns on it, and I didn't want to use a picture of Gary, so I instead got the picture of the boss from El Dorado, who was later played Mary Tyler Moore's boss. Anyway.
Yeah. I really like how you did for Budo. I really like how you kind of lined it out, and you put the sections where one wound and then a second wound, and it works really, really well.
I wanted a streamlined version for conventions. It's not the way the original rules have it, but it's much easier to move along quickly, especially if you're in a convention setting where you're teaching it to someone who doesn't know much about RPGs. And interestingly enough, even though this is one of the oldest RPGs, it's still a pretty good gateway into role playing because almost everyone has seen a Western TV show or movie, and so you understand some of the tropes. And even if you try to do something that I tell you, well, there's not very much chance of you doing that successfully. It's something, you understand, oh yeah, I might want to tumble from the horse, or I might want to try to stand on the horse and jump onto the balcony or something like that. So
yeah, it's very relatable. It's very relatable because everybody, like you said, everybody has seen Clint Eastwood or the Duke or et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, you definite recommendation if you're at a con and Allen's running Boothill, jump on it, and they fill up fast too. They don't sit around. So
don't dally around. All right.
Yeah, this is Angelo from the DM and Friends. I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Also wanted to remind everybody to hit that like and subscribe button, as it really, really helps. All right, now back to the show. I'd like to read a little thing that's on Wikipedia, if you don't mind. Kind of will set the stage for.
And I'll correct it. There are some things where if you look up somebody in AI, it just totally hallucinates, and it conflates three people with similar names.
Oh my God!
So anyway, go right ahead.
Yeah, it says for you, Allen Hammack, you joined TSR in 1978, where you're one of the few employees who designed, wrote, and edited games. True. Yes. Hammack wrote the adventure, The Ghost Tower of, I always mess the word up, Inverness. Inverness, which is this guy right here. You also developed and were an editor for the 1980 role-playing game Top Secret with Merle. You wrote the game, and then it also goes on to say that you wrote an article in Dragon, which there's a couple other articles you wrote in Dragon, which we'll talk about someday, related to Boothill, titled The Super Spies, with dossiers of spies from James Bond to Maxwell Smart. It also says that you wrote, and I have a copy of this too, the 1981 adventure Assault on the Area of the Slave Lords. This guy right here.
Right. Part of the Slave Lords tournament.
Yep. What a great series that was too, by the way. Hammack was a designer for TSR Hobbies, Inc. by 1982. Design manager, sorry. You were also, and it goes on to say you were also designing games for TSR at that time, editing. Hammack designed the 1982 board game Viking Gods for TSR. And then it talks about the downfall of financial trouble in the 80s, et cetera. And I think you left TSR around.
I left in 83.
83, so right before the whole thing that happened there.
Well, it was one of the purge days where they got rid of over 100 employees on the same day.
Yeah.
Not fun.
So how accurate was all that? Was that accurate?
That was accurate enough. Viking Gods was actually a mini game, which it is a board game, but it was one of the small ones that came.
The little boxes.
Tiny box that you could put on a peg in a storage in a room. Okay, marketing in games and publishing in general is shelf space is at a premium, and so the idea was that you could put several of the mini games up in the space that it would take to display a regular game or a book cover face out. So this was an idea to concentrate the appeal in the way that, for example, comic book spinners in drugstores did, where you had a bunch of comics in one row, and it would spin, and there would be like 5 or 6 different slots so you get a bunch of stuff, but you're only taking up the floor space of like 1 foot by 1 foot. So it was this was marketing has to do should be driving a lot in publishing. Sometimes publishers, to their chagrin, ignore it. So
I don't have a copy of Viking Gods, but I do know exactly what you're talking about. You're talking about something similar to.
Yeah, it was the same format as Vampire, right? And perhaps the most my favorite title of all of the ones we did was They've Invaded Pleasantville.
Yes, I've seen that.
One. and it had the American Gothic painting, but the lady
with the horns. She had the horns
with the antennas coming out.
Yeah, the horns. Not horns. They were antennas. Yeah.
And one of the mini games was also Tom Wam's Icebergs game.
Oh yes, okay.
Kind of the ultimate beer and pretzels game. So
yeah. You guys did a lot of those mini games at that time. I think there was I don't know if there was a specific count, but I know I've seen many of them. So.
Yeah, it wasn't a super successful experiment, but it was fun for us because a lot of us got to Kevin Hendricks got to do the Alamo. Remember the Alamo game?
Yes.
A lot of us got to exercise our wargaming chops, and this goes back to you were asking how I got into gaming.
Yeah. Please tell me.
I was a war gamer, an Avalon Hill, historical war gamer.
Yeah.
And I got into that because, played chess in high school and found it a little too abstract. And then we didn't have a friendly local game store at the time. What we had was the Homewood Bicycle and Hobby Shop, and that was where we bought bicycles, games like Monopoly and Yahtzee, and model rockets, the Estes model rockets.
Oh yeah.
And then one day I went in looking for the model rockets, and I saw this strange Avalon Hill game called Blitzkrieg.
Oh, I got a copy of that. Yes.
All of a sudden, it was like, ooh, these aren't knights and pawns. These are actual numbered armored divisions. And they do different stuff if they're artillery, and they do different stuff if they're infantry. I have to try this. And I was hooked forever on that. And eventually, the Avalon Hill magazine, The General, had I subscribed to that. And on their back page, they had an opponents wanted classified section.
Oh, wow.
And then I saw somebody else from Birmingham, Alabama, which is where I was from. I went, somebody else in the city plays these games. Yay. I had been playing by mail, which is a tedious process to set up and record the grid coordinates of a game with hundreds of pieces like Waterloo or Stalingrad or Blitzkrieg. I met my friend Al Ronderas. He was a member of a fledgling nationwide gaming group called the Sparta International Competition League. And Sparta was a competitor to the IFW, the International Federation of Wargamers, which was more Midwest heavy, and Sparta was more on the coast than in the South heavy, simply because the IFW, to compete effectively, you had to travel to the Midwest conventions. And,
sure,
those of us who were in high school and college, that was a big ass. But so, yeah, we had a chapter of a local wargaming, and that I got introduced to historical miniature gaming through that group, and then I got introduced to the idea of going to conventions and competing with other people against that, and I went, this is great, this is fun. And then one day, one Saturday, we went in and I said, well, what are we going to play today? And they said, well, so-and-so has brought out their new medieval historical miniatures rules. I went, oh, great. And said, and we're playing with the fantasy options. So there are things like wizards and Nazgul and hobbits in it. And I went,
oh, wow.
Really? So.
Yeah. Were you a fan of Tolkien?
Chainmail. We were playing Chainmail with the fantasy supplement that Gary had added to it.
Got it.
So that's what evolved into Dungeons and Dragons was that fantasy supplement to Chainmail.
Yes. You said something a second ago, and it just kind of the question popped in my mind. Is a little curious. So the old school play by mail. Did you guys, especially for like Blitzkrieg, right? That game is it's got the grid, the board, you have the chits. How did you guys include? Because you would mail back and forth, right? So did you guys include the grid system in the letter, and then you say I'm over here and I'm moving over here, or how did that work?
Avalon Hill made play-by-mail sheets, which basically consisted of order of battles of all of the units. And what you did was you wrote the grid coordinates down for each unit, and then there was a separate section for attacks. You calculated the odds, and for die rolling, you picked a stock and a day, and every attack had to be a different stock, and the last digit of the stock report for that day was the resulting number. So it was the play by mail system that went to essentially a D10 combat table instead of a D6, because the stock could be anywhere, the last number would be anywhere from 0 to 9. And it was cumbersome, but it was about as random as you could possibly, select.
God, I bet you'd sit there chomping at the bit, waiting for that mail come back to see the results.
And unless you happen to be already wealthy, you didn't have the space to leave a lot of games set up. Maybe you might leave one game set up, but for the other, when you got the next move, you had to take out the game, put all the pieces back on the grid where they were supposed to be, and then resolve the combat, and then make your. So it was interesting. It was another exercise in skill sets.
Yes. God, what was that like playing chainmail with the fantasy supplement for the first time ever? I love hearing it, because I've said this in some of my other streams and videos. I remember my first dice roll. I remember the sound of the dice. I remember where I was. I have a very good just memory of that, where it's very very vivid. What was that like for you? Because that obviously, I'm just going to put words in your mouth. So I'm sure that spearheaded you into where you ended up being. So
it certainly helped carry my enthusiasm for it, because I had gotten into Lord of the Rings a couple of years prior to that, and was enthusiastic about it. And then to see this was really neat. And I remember I was playing the Alliance, and one of the enemies, Nazgul, was cruising over and had something like a 30-inch fear radius. And I understood, and he was making me make morale checks on a number of troop units and things like that. And and he was like, he was just outside the range of my wizard's lightning bolts or fireballs and things like that. So I think maybe he was flying at 31 inches, but because the units were 3/4 of an inch tall, they were within his fear radius, the way our referee. Okay, so for those who don't remember, when you're in miniatures games, there always is a referee for it. And this referee, and part of the evolution of gaming was to be good enough and to become neutral enough that you could become a referee in a game like this. And so you impartially said, okay, yes, from where he is, I can see that would bisect the figure, and so he would be within the fear radius. I said, okay.
Sure, my head's sticking in the fear radius.
I went, yes, I understand that. And then I said, I whispered to the referee a question, and he was a little puzzled by it. And I said, how tall are the trees? And he said, 2 inches. And I said, okay. And so on the next pass, my wizard climbed to the top of the tree, and he was within lightning bolt range of the nozzle, and I got that sucker out of the sky. That's what I remember from my chainmail.
Oh my God, that's amazing. Yeah. That is so
it's a little bit, out of the box thinking can be very useful in role-playing games. It can also sometimes be useful in miniatures games.
Yeah. So how did that transition into, because we all know Chainmail was a miniatures game. It was kind of launched into D&D, which was, okay, now instead of, controlling squads, platoons, battalions, whatever, now I'm controlling a single character or multiple characters.
Right. And
how did that work for you? Do you remember that?
Yeah, because it was really interesting. Miniatures players were used to the idea of a single figure, like a general or a captain,
or something,
being moved to help boost morale or execute orders or whatever. But this kind of introduced the idea that you might have several individual characters, like your Hobbit. Slingers, and but each of them were individuals, and your wizard was an individual, and the hero warrior was an individual. And that kind of got our minds shifting towards a mindset that would be useful when Dungeons and Dragons came out and saying all of them are individual figures. Each one is a one-to-one, and you're only going to be responsible for one, not a side. That was a mindset transition that had to be made to get us into role playing.
Yeah, because you were so into, being Avalon Hill, you were so into, you have that kind of larger mindset going into the tactics of the board and stuff. And then, wow, now you're in a dungeon. Do you remember your first game that where you were, your first game of D&D or your first RPG?
Yes, yeah, I remember, and I remember being a wizard, and I remember finding out that I was only going to get one spell at first level, and I said, I'm taking shield, because clearly, I'm a very vulnerable person. If I want to live, well, I need a shield,
and I need some scrolls.
Got to get something. But we also a very important lesson in original Dungeons and Dragons that my first DM taught me was that lightning bolts bounce when they hit stone.
Oh, yes, they do.
We learned it without killing ourselves, and I used it to good effect as a DM, trapping some players in a situation where one of them didn't understand that and ended up nearly killing the whole party for me. So
yeah. lightning bolt definitely in any old school game, basic OD&D, AD&D, that's a party killer if you do it in a dungeon for sure.
As was Fireball.
Oh my God.
Fireball required the ability to calculate cubic volume.
Yes, sure did.
Or else, you were in trouble.
Yeah. I used to use little D6s as a 10 by 10 cubic feet, and you stack them up, and it would end up many times that fireball didn't just contain in that room; it went 100 feet down the hallway. So, that's
I especially had fun as a DM, occasionally putting them in corridors or rooms that had 7-foot ceilings, so it messed up their perception of how big the room was, and it actually, because it had a low ceiling, the burst was going to burst further out down
further
the
than
park.
10 by 10. Yeah.
Yeah,
Ooh.
I know I'm nasty.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I played in a couple, definitely a couple games with you. I know how you roll for sure.
I'm firm there, like Judge Dredd. So
Yeah. So kind of moving on. So I mean, that's how you got into gaming. So like, what brought you to TSR? I mean, that's such a I mean, you've talked about it before, but yeah, I'd love to hear more about how you even just kind of got into that.
Yeah, as a player, I had written letters to TSR and to Strategic Review before Dragon came out, and then to the early Dragon, and some of them were suggestions on rules changes and things like that, which were stomped out because they didn't approve of that kind of thing unless Gary was writing it in the magazine. Yeah. But I went to conventions. Went to the very first Origins was held in Baltimore at Johns Hopkins University. And the first two of them, I think, were there. And we managed to get enough time away from our summer jobs to caravan up to the Origins 1 and play in the D&D tournament there. In the same summer, I went to Gen Con with some of my friends, and we played in the D&D tournament there. And I met Tim Kask at Origins, and I played in Bob Blake's killer tournament at Gen Con 9, and they awarded prizes by class. So there was a best fighter, a best cleric, a best magic user, and so on. And I won best magic user.
Wow.
And again, a bit out of the box thinking, we got to the big bad at the end, which happened to be a lich. With all of our best shots, did apparently no damage to it. And I tapped my friend on the shoulder and I said, "Do you want to get out of here?" And he nodded, and I dimension doored us up as far as I could and then kicked in Featherfall. And we ran away and survived. But because we survived, we outscored the other people who stayed and fought the big bad.
Yeah.
So again, that in early D&D, sometimes running away was the correct answer.
Yeah, the point system on a lot of those early tournament modules was if you can avoid fighting and get further, you're going to win the tournament. Yeah.
And still, that's not a bad principle for any tournament that you're in. If you can avoid getting in a slog, you're probably going to have more time to think about the things later on that you need to think about.
Yeah. So, was that tournament? Was that you mentioned a lich? The first thing that comes to my mind was that Tomb of Horrors that was being ran.
No. I did play in Tomb of Horrors though, but this was a Bob Blake tournament that I think was done by Judges Guild, and it's got a name that is inappropriate for general podcast use.
Okay, I'll have to look that up.
I'll tell you later.
Got it. Okay. Got it.
But anyway, yes, I did play in when Tomb of Horrors was run as a tournament. I was still a player then, and we avoided the cave mouth with the Sphere of Annihilation because I had suggested a test, and I tied an iron spike to the end of a rope and threw it in the mouth, and the DM said, "The rope comes back sheared off cleanly." And I said, "We're not going in there."
Oh my God.
But anyway, I like to say that because I won in Gen Con 9 tournament, the reward is that they don't want you to be a player anymore. They want you to be a DM.
Yeah.
And so next year I was a DM and actually met some people who would later become lifelong friends and employees at TSR. And then the next year when I went to Gen Con was when it was at Parkside. And that was when I arrived and was walking towards my game, and Gary Gygax waved me over and said, "When can you start?" Because I was one of a number of people who had answered an ad in the Dragon for an editor. And it was an interesting experience, but apart from being someone who was already published as a letter writer, already won a tournament that they knew about, had played in a tournament with one of their employees, with Tim. So I was known to them. I had a bachelor's degree already in chemistry, was working on a master's degree, but I also had actual experience as an editor for some regional newspaper, alternate newspapers, and so in addition to being a writer, I had real editing experience.
Perfect fit. Yeah.
So I was up there, and the prerequisite at the time was they were going to pay you so little, you'd better really enjoy making your hobby your job for a while, and that was what got me up there. So
wow. And so you at that time you moved to Lake Geneva, and what year was it? This was
1978.
78.
Gen Con was in August, and September 1st I started. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So what was the first project that you worked on?
The first project that I worked on was TSR's adaptation of a British board game called Fourth Dimension. And it was kind of a circular chess game. What I didn't realize at the time was it was a very, it's not really Doctor Who, but there's a lot of names that we're going to use from Doctor Who, like Time Warp and Time Lords and things like that. So I see what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
The difference between this and normal chess, even though it was a circular board, was you could elect to send a piece off into a warp off the board for 1, 2, or 3 turns and bring it back onto the board at a different space. So it was a gimmick, but it was an interesting thing, and I was able to edit the British into American and to work with Dave Sutherland for the first project. He's the one who devised the background of the board, which is a swirling colored mess to represent the time-space vortex. And he showed me how he was doing that, and what he was doing was mounting a piece of cardboard onto a drill bit and spinning it very slowly and drizzling oil paint on it so that it got into swirls and mixes. And he did about 10 of those before he got one that we both liked, and color combinations that would pop and things like that. So
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, it was neat. My office was in the art loft with Dave Sutherland, sharing a desk and a typewriter with the other editor named Tim Jones. So it was very tight quarters for a while.
Early TSR, yeah. So this was 78, and you were at that time. They were starting to release AD&D.
Right.
I believe it was 70.
The player's handbook had just come out
the
month that I was hired. And so, of course, we knew we'd be working within a couple of months on the Dungeon Master's Guide. And before that, actually, I got to see the Holmes set. And it was almost already done or being set for reprint, but I got to see it in what we call Blue Line, which was a pre-publication, almost final version of it. Kind of is printed on yellowish paper in blue, which is a hard color combination to read.
God, I can't imagine that.
But and I don't know why they did it quite that way, but anyway, this was what you were supposed to make all final edits on. And at this stage, because it had already been typeset, any changes are expensive changes. There are fees. You had to pay a typesetter who sat on an instrument that looked like a Wurlitzer organ. It wasn't just a keyboard. There were all sorts of special keys to change fonts, to do bold and italics and M spaces and N spaces and things like that. Anyway, so expenses changes were expensive at that point. So if it was just an Oxford comma would go there, and we went, that's too expensive. Leave it now. If you had caught it earlier, we would have put the comma in. So there are financial considerations to making changes at the late stages of a game like that.
And for an up and coming company too, that's probably an acceptable.
Right. And so anyway, the point was, I got to see the Blue Line version of the Holmes set when that came out. That was being so. Did I contribute to it? I don't know. I was one of the editors at the final look at it, and I might have had a couple of pencil marks and fixes in there. So, but then it wasn't too long until we started working on the Dungeon Master's Guide, and I had one of the, we'll just call them Xerox, one of the photocopied stacks of Gary's typed manuscript, which was heavy because it was typed, so lots of pages. But he had sent out those to a number of his friends, like Len Lakofka, like Don Turnbull, and to others from his previous D&D associations. So all of the editors we had in the house, we had expanded by a few people by then. We sat in the downstairs of the Dungeon Hobby Shop because it was the only room that could hold that many people at the time, and went through it page by page, not only with the copy that the editors had and had made suggestions, but also we had to read what his friends had. And so page by page, almost line by line, we went through it. And there were times when Gary would say, "Oh yeah, Don's right. I need to fix that." Or he would say, "Yeah, that needs to be changed a little. Harold, you fix it, or Alan, you fix it." And there were times when he would say, "No, it's fine the way it is. Damn it, And so it just depended on mood, the significance of the change, and how tired he was at the point. So
well, the Dungeon Master Guide, I think at that time was probably the biggest work of writing or book that was. I know this is an older cover, one of the later prints, but that was probably one of the biggest projects I think
Right. This is the original cover.
Yeah.
And City of Brass on it.
Yeah. I got a couple copies.
And
there.
You can see that original painting if you go
Beautiful.
to Gary Cons. If you go to Gary Cons and look in the Legends of Wargaming or Legends of Role Playing room.
Yeah. It says so. Yeah, so I imagine that because that was a beast to get out, and it's funny. I'm looking on page 8 of this one, a letter from Gary, and they let me see if I can bring that in. They have you there. I don't know if you can see that. You're known as Al.
Yes.
Did Gary call you Al?
He did. My name is Allen. Until then, the only person that called me Al was my father. And I got, it's one of those things where the boss can call you whatever he wants to.
Oh yeah, I bet.
And so, I had to take it. And because Gary called me that, then some of the others thought they could call me that. And I tried to correct them if they were equals, and if it was, Brian, Bloom, again.
People love you.
I can't do anything about it. Call me whatever. Yeah.
So yeah, that's great. That's man, I can just imagine the environment there. I can just imagine the creativity and the stuff going on, the gaming. It must have been a really great time.
My favorite time was crowded into the old building, which is now, for a time was known as the Dungeon Hobby Shop Museum. I think the building is still there. The previous owners had difficulties with it, but anyway, it's to my mind a more historic building than the previous house where he wrote it, and where I wrote a lot of it, because this is where they got going on it and turned into a company. It was. And I haven't said this enough, but the TSR wouldn't have succeeded without Mike Carr and Dave Sutherland, just because they both had a work ethic and a drive to succeed at times, that was amazing. And they would get things put out and knocked out, and the Dungeon Master's Guide. The other thing I wanted to say is, up until then, no one had ever tried to do a comprehensive index of, and this, we tried to index Monster Manual, Player's Handbook, and DMG in the DMG index, which was a challenge. So this is before computers, just typewriters. So
the technology sure has changed that beast. That's
So yes, it was a fun time, and I'll tell you one other magical to me portion of being that close. By then, they had started to acquire the hotel downtown Lake Geneva, where they eventually were going to move operations for a time. But some of the people moved out to be setting that up. There was a time when Mike Carr moved to the hotel, I ended up getting his office. That office was right next to Gary Gygax's office.
Oh, wow.
And that was the time when I was the editor for the first edition World of Greyhawk that Gary wrote. And so it was really neat to be able to walk a few footsteps into the next room to ask Gary about a passage, what he meant by this. Did the Flyness and the Urids actually have this kind of struggle, or was I misreading it? Did we need to clarify it? What was the invoked devastation and what impact did it have on this area? The reign of colorless fire, give me some background on that. So yeah, that was neat.
So you were editor for, or part editor for the folio, or for the
This was the folio, the first edition. Yeah.
Yeah. So you're talking about this guy right here.
Yep, I was the editor for it.
Yeah. Yeah, this one came out in 1980, and I think the gold box came out 83, 82.
The very the interesting thing about that I like to laugh about,
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know why I missed that here. I mean, I'm a Greyhawk person too, but there you are.
The interesting thing about it was, in my mind, I thought they were making a mistake by publishing this. I didn't see any interest in it. In my group, there wouldn't have been any interest in it because we all created our own worlds.
Yeah, that's what we did back then.
I mean, yes, we took from books that we loved and things like that, and borrowed names and geographies and stuff to happen. But why would anybody need a prefabricated setting? The GM is supposed to do all that work.
Yeah.
And I was pleasantly surprised that lots of people were interested in that. I mean, very interested, because people to this day are debating the first versions of World of Greyhawk and stuff that went on.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that, because I started playing obviously a little bit after. I was about 81 and in that area where there's the AD&D, when AD&D just came out, and that was where I got my teeth cut on. But modules were a foreign thing to me back then, because I couldn't afford them.
Right.
B, I could barely afford the books. And then also we had the Satanic Panic going on, which my parents threw away my rule books 55,000 times. So having this logo paraphernalia was dangerous. It was a dangerous thing to have. And so we wrote all of our own dungeons and our own worlds and our own just our own settings, and even at some point our own monsters and our own, and I don't know if that's a lost art, but having modules and having settings like that. Think about all the settings that came out with 2E. I mean, I'm a Greyhawk person, so I run almost strictly out of Greyhawk, but it's just funny that for us old schoolers, that was just how we played.
Right. Well, in my group, almost every player was expected to also be a DM sometimes.
Yeah.
You would have your own world, although sometimes for fun we would geographically connect them, and at the corner of my world would be Dennis's, the world, and things like that. But we also wrote our own keys and things, with the expectation that it might not be me running it. It might be one of the other could run my world, and I could be a player in it. So yeah. But yes, that it turns out that there's a big demand for pre-generated things, and really, it's like writing a novella. It's like writing a short book. You have a plot, you have something to hook them in, and some sort of payoff or climax. I know there are things which are just sandboxes, and they want to describe settings, and they don't really have anything for you to to do. You make your own, and you go into these places, and then you interact with people, and then you find stories, and then the DM is expected to expand from there. But I kind of like the things that will make a series a continuing arc with some sort of epic conclusion, So
yeah, this blows me away. I don't know how I missed the fact that you were the editor in one of my favorite settings.
I had my fingers in a lot of things.
I know you did. I didn't realize Greyhawk. What was that like, even just editing Greyhawk for because I really do feel that we know this was one of the first settings that was out, and I feel like for a DM kind of in that time, it is so sandboxy and so open that I can put whatever I want in it, and it's such a great.
I felt the challenge was that it felt like I was writing or helping to develop the history of Gary's campaign. I mean, all of the geographical things, you recognize the names of his children and his names of his friends and things like that in it. So it was kind of cool because you also know that these were where the spells with names, came from, and this is where such and such developed.
Bixby and
and Tensor and Melf and all of the rest. That was very cool. But I would have tried to include some sort of adventure or hooks or something that we could go with from there. But at the time I was the lowly editor, so you do what in the end you do what the publisher wants. So
well, I mean, getting onto, you were talking about arcs, and you were talking about this one, maybe not in particular, but so the Ghost Tower, which came in the same year, you said 79, I think, was when you released this, and this is your soul. You authored this. Did you? Quick question on this: did you write this knowing that it was going to fit in Greyhawk? Because there is a very specific location for where the Ghost Tower is, on the Darlene map.
Right. We were by that time following TSR had decided that all modules were going to be set in the world of Greyhawk. And
really?
It was a way to push for sales.
The sale of this.
Yeah. So that was their decision. Everything about my adventure was adapted from my home campaign. One of the Inverness was a dungeon in my home campaign, and the most popular one, although there are some things. Well, for a tournament, I had to shorten and shrink and rearrange some things in it, but because we had to write and produce a tournament in a very short period of time, they said, does anybody have something already from home that they could do as a starting point? And I went, yeah, I think I can do that. And so that's where that originally came from. Paul Stormberg runs the Collector's Cove auctions, a good site for a lot of historic RPG stuff. He bought my original Inverness dungeon maps, or chicken scratching. Wow. I mean, I was a kid, and he developed one of his tournaments that he runs at GaryCon is kind of based on, it was called Inverness, What Lies Beneath, or something like that. And basically he was going to take some of my original dungeon maps and rekey them into his sort of, massive multiplayer campaign, or sorry, tournament
Sure.
that he does. So it's kind of interesting that it's still living on. So it's about a 49-year-old campaign at that point. It's still running on.
So yeah, Alan, talking that's interesting. You're saying this was from your home campaign. Some of the things that I remember, and I've played in your games at the con. I think I've played a couple times, and I know you always make it different every single time. That's the famous thing. Like you go to North Texas, that Alan is going to run Ghost Tower and he's going to run Boothill, and those are, I've been in several of your. I never miss the Boothill. I've been in several of your Ghost Tower, and you always do a different route. You always do something different, and I do see that makes a lot of sense that this was from your home campaign, because I remember that chessboard, the chessboard trap, where you have to figure out the knights and your method of getting through that trap, and
there's about 3 different ways to play that room that I've done over the time. So if I think anybody is overly familiar with what's happening, I'll
tweak it. Yeah. You are putting all modules into Greyhawk, and then
right.
And
that was a push for if you had all modules located in World of Greyhawk, then people were more likely to buy the World of Greyhawk as a setting. I would call it sometimes, we were shoehorned into it, because the geography that I had based on Inverness, there weren't many places in Greyhawk but I found one and picked it and altered something a little bit to make that work. Lawrence Schick's White Plume Mountain was entirely independent. That was actually his resume to get hired, was sending that in, but had the geography that he had. Really had to work to find something in Greyhawk for there. But that's kind of the way it was with everybody who adapted something they had worked on before they came to work at TSR.
And so 79 was a pretty hardcore year for you. I mean, you were doing a lot of things because your name was on this and that, and boom, boom, boom. And then you also, I don't want to, but let's creep this in there too.
Yes, that
was in 79 too, right? Second edition, I think, was in 79.
I was told early on that they were going to do another version of this. I went, yay, because we had played the original small digest pamphlet version.
Yeah, the little
and that was, as a set of, it was originally called Miniature Skirmish Rules, and I've held on to that description for conventions, because I don't want people thinking that Boothill is a typical role-playing game. It's really not, because your character really isn't expected to survive and progress. Even the way the campaign was, there wasn't much progression or abilities or anything like that. Just a little bit in there. So this was a miniatures game with a veneer of role playing painted on, to it. And the idea, of course, was that, Dungeons and Dragons is starting to show some popularity. Why don't we get some other role playing games out there in different settings and see what we can do. So this was kind of rushed forward, and Brian did so little in it. Normally, if I'm editing a product, at least by then, I would expect typewritten pages that we work on. And
oh boy, yeah.
What he had done was taken cardboard layout pages. He had cut up one of the old digests, and he would just glue the page onto it, and then add 1 line, 2 line, change a number here, change a rating there for something. It was
like on cardstock or something like that.
Yeah, that's the way editing was done. You would run a typeset galley through a waxing machine, and which put a little bit of glue that was removable onto it, and then you would stick it on this larger than an 8.5 by 11 piece of cardboard stock, and this had light blue lines coming from the corner so that you could center it and square it and make sure that that everything was set up. And it was these blue lines that, after you did that and made your corrections, you would do that and set it in front of an offset camera, so that that would be the beginning of the printing process. But so instead of a full-size typewriter page to edit, we had this smaller typeset digest size page that he put down. And I went, Mike, let me just retype everything in here, you know, and then it'll be easier to work on, you know.
Yeah.
And it turned out that between Mike Carr and myself, I think we probably did several pages worth of writing and new material. The other thing we were trying to do by that time, because we had started with Dungeons and Dragons, was every role-playing game was going to have a short section on how to meld it with other role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons. You want your Boothill character to walk into a fantasy setting,
crossover.
This is called Six Guns and Sorcery. And it was there was an article that Gary had written originally, I think, about it in the Dragon or Strategic Review, and I thought this was cool. We had tried it a few times. Every once in a while, it's neat. I mean, and if you think about it, there were some comic books like Ghost Rider, which play into the fantasy Western, you know, sort of setting. So yeah, we expanded what Brian gave us to quite a bit to get to the second edition. I'll also want to say that if you have I don't suppose you have the box cover of the second edition there.
I do. Yeah, let me go grab it.
All right. All right. So if you hold that up for the camera, the dude in the blue jacket that's drawing down on the table there, that's me.
That is.
I posed for it for the artist. Specifically, he wanted to see how a denim coat would hang on a shoulder if somebody was preparing to draw, and so he wanted to get the folds right. So he had me put on that and turn around, and so that's my back.
That's awesome, man. Yeah. So did you control? Well, I know. I mean, in the Boothill, I mean, in second edition Boothill, I know this whole table. Like, you wrote the original article, I think, for the fastest guns that ever lived, right? I think that was all you that wrote that, right?
Yeah, Brian had written something that where he gave a handful of ratings for some of them, and I went, wow, you didn't go nearly far enough, and I started rattling off other movies and shows and things like that. So I wrote 2 or 3 expansions to that. Because I'm a completist nerd. So
yeah, because I think it spanned over a couple of dragons, didn't it? Yeah, there's like 3 or 4 articles, and you're right. I think you're on 2, 3, and 4. Yeah,
he did the first one, and but Brian also would get. I think probably today he would be diagnosed with ADHD. He would get very focused on something for a while, and then see something else shiny and totally stop work on it. So he never wrote anything about Boothill after that first article.
And so were you part of the conversion for Boothill to because you know how there's the Gamma World crossover, there's the Boothill crossover.
Yeah.
Did you contribute to that?
I did modify some of the combat results for Boothill to D&D and such. And in the DMG, one of the sections that I had input on was the spell effects underwater and in other planes, because I also was partial editor for Q1, the Queen of the Demon Web Pits.
Love it.
When it was in there. So and by partial editor, I mean I was in the room with Dave Sutherland when Mike was discussing it with him, and I couldn't resist sticking my 2 cents in, and sometimes it stuck. So
yeah, I have a copy of that somewhere. That's a love that module.
Back to Greyhawk for one thing before I again, still working in that same house. These products came out of there. I saw Dave Sutherland slaving over the coats of arms on the cover. That's a lot of work to get that many shields of arms on the folio around. It's just decorative, right? But it's a lot of art, and of course, convincing him that he needed help with the map, that he wasn't going to be able to get all of the art on the border done and the interior art and the map, because the map was going to be such a huge project, and that he should that he should convince them to outsource that. And so we outsourced it to Darlene, who, as a calligrapher, had an edge up in at least the labeling of it, and she became, a very good cartographer as a result of that project. So
what a famous map that became.
Yeah.
Well, Alan, holy moly, this has been awesome, and I hope to have you back for a part 2. We didn't even get to the great arc that you were talking about with the slave lords,
the slave lords and the top secret, and
top secret and all that.
A lot more fun to discuss. The games that TSR employees played that nearly got us banned from Gen Con. And
oh man, I can't wait to hear about that.
Nearly got banned from our own convention. How about that? That'll be fun for part 2. That's my stay tuned.
That's your plug to keep everybody on their edge. Well, Alan, look, like I said, thank you so much for coming on here. It was really a pleasure talking to you. I look forward to talking again with you. And everybody out there, by the way, thank you so much for following, commenting, viewing, subscribing, liking. this has been a lot of fun, and I do appreciate all of you. And Allen, thank you so much again for coming on.
Angelo, it's been a pleasure. It really has. I look forward to the next time, and to, of course, seeing you at North Texas.
Man, I do too. Are you going to be at Page?
I will be at Page this year.
I'll see you then. Yeah.
All right. All right. Very good.
All right, my friend. You take care.
Philadelphia Expo for those of you that want to come. So.
And I actually will be having Ron on next week talking about Page.
Well, he will talk enough about it. I don't need to.
Yeah.
But
Allen,
Page is January, GaryCon in March, and then North Texas and EggCon are my coming up.
EggCon too. I'll be there coming.
Very good. Outstanding. Yeah. Good to see you.
Well, you guys all take care, and thanks so much, and take care, everybody.
So long.